Welcome back to Helping Hands. Joining me on the panel today to discuss providing a safe haven for victims of domestic and family violence, CEO of Biani House, Lisa Annabelle, the founder and director of Horizons Family Law Centre, Steve Frost, and manager of community development at the women's housing company, Libby Caskey. Steve, what is domestic and family violence?
Goodness, if you'd asked me that question 30 years ago when I first started practicing law, I would have given you a really simplistic answer, and it would have focused on physical aspects of how people treat each other poorly. And thankfully, over the 3 decades that I've been in practice, there's been a much greater understanding about the different ways people can damage one another in a domestic setting. And the understanding these days in the family law system would be that any kind of behaviour that's violent or threatening is family violence, but also any other behaviour at all that has the effect on another person of making them fearful or making them feel coerced would also be family violence.
So Libby, how do we define a safe haven when we're talking about domestic and family violence?
A safe haven is a place that someone can finally feel safe. They feel that they can trust the person that they're with or the environment that they're in, and that is absolutely fundamental. And with that, they'll be empowered to take those next steps that are required to have the long-term safety that they deserve.
So Lisa, what are some of the things that Biani House does to provide a safe haven?
So safety is at the heart of everything that we do. It's very important that the women and children who come to stay with us always feel safe, and that's physically, emotionally and psychologically. It starts with a welcoming physical environment where people can feel that they can, rest and restore, but it also extends to feeling that they're being respected and listened to and supported in their journey when they leave domestic violence.
Steve, what are some of the legal measures that need to be in place for these victims of family and domestic violence?
I think, broadly speaking, people need to think about how they can get from being physically together to physically separate. That's a housing question, and there's people here who can help speak to that better than I can. They need to be separate as well financially. There's a saying amongst some lawyers about finances and the ownership of property being golden handcuffs. They tie you to someone who you might be trying to move on from in a way that sometimes is hard to get out of. And then obviously you need to somehow sort out arrangements for children as well, so that if it's possible, children can enjoy a safe relationship with both their parents, or otherwise for that to be severed for one parent if it's completely impossible to make it safe.
Lisa, how have you seen the importance of having a safe place for victims of family and domestic violence? How important is it for them?
It's vital. It's, incredibly important for people to have a safe place to go. It's the difference between staying in a situation that might be dangerous and having the opportunity to start again somewhere safe where they can heal from trauma and start to rebuild their lives.
Libby, what difference do you see in your work of having that safe haven?
It's so interesting because every woman and her children's story is incredibly different. And it's been interesting when you hear stories, the difference when they access the services and support and how they felt during the time that they accessed the service and support. While there are so many providers and so much support out there, there are also very long wait lists. If a woman has to wait on that wait list for a period of time, the likelihood of her returning to her perpetrator is very common, and the impact that has on her and her family, we see it every day when they finally do secure the safe housing that they deserve. Whereas if someone is able to step through the door, like a service such as yours, and then be placed into transitional or long-term safe and secure housing, you will see that woman absolutely flourish. She'll go back into work over time with support. You'll see the positive impacts on her children. And again, I see that side of things, and then I also see what happens when they don't get that access. And it's a big challenge that we're still seeing in our sector, and one that we're looking to continually address.
Steve, if someone's listening and they're in a situation of family domestic violence right now, what are some of the legalities as a lawyer that you would say to them?
The first thing I want to say to them is that the law wants them to be safe. I think I'd say to them that the law wants them to be free, to have a sense of agency and ability to shape their own life. I think accessing a lawyer is intimidating. There's a lot of research that suggests people are far more likely to reach out to friends and community members, and these days ChatGPT, and try and solve their problems that way rather than contacting a lawyer. But there's a robust community sector of free and government-funded lawyers who can help someone plan a path and then follow a path from something that's unsafe or corrosive into something that can be a fresh opportunity at a safe and positive life for them and their kids. So police provide great support for people in the riskier situations. And then there's a collection of lawyers, mediators, courts, all sorts of services that are out there that can provide help. And generally speaking, the aim is to do that at the lowest possible level. That the law wants people to solve their own problems as much as possible, but where you've got power imbalances that people are trying to pick their way out of, sometimes you need help from someone who can stand alongside you in the role of the advocate and the advisor and help you plan a way out. That's where lawyers can add value in this.
Absolutely, and if I can speak to that point, a big part I think that services can provide is advocacy of the individual. You know, when you have had such traumatic experiences, that ability to understand the next steps to take are incredibly challenging. So having someone to walk beside you to achieve what is needed to set up the rest of their lives is fundamental.
How hard is it, Libby? I'm thinking of, you know, the crisis accommodation is there, but long-term housing, how hard is it for these victims to find long-term housing?
When I walk into a service, they jump at me because they have such incredibly long wait lists where they're providing the case management to the women who might still be living with the perpetrator, but there is nowhere for this woman to go. If she is and her children are lucky to get the services such as yours, the next step of being able to access housing can take a very long time, and it is because of the lack of housing we're seeing in Australia at the moment. You know, it's an evolving challenge that we are seeing, and it is having a profound impact on the women and how quickly they get back on with their lives.
Lisa, thinking about the general public, is there anything that we can be doing to help people find safe housing when they're in domestic or family violence situations?
That's a complex question. All levels of government are currently working to try and address the housing crisis in Australia. There's amazing corporates and philanthropic organisations coming forward offering properties. Meanwhile use is a very strong growing place. So for anyone who has a property or an opportunity to donate to those services that are building out housing for women, then I would say, you know, jump in and get involved, because there's some great stories coming out of the meanwhile use sector at the moment, and people really trying their best to find solutions in a really difficult housing market. Yeah.
And I think with the rental market being as challenging as it is at the moment, another great thing that people could do if they do have a home is actually look to provide their home, you know, if they're listing it, ensure that it is going to a woman with children. That is one of the best things that you can do, particularly with the program that sets women up to be able to enter the private market with a subsidy. It's fundamental because it's that next step that they can take if they can't access the long-term social housing or they can't access crisis accommodation.
Well, thank you all so much for your contributions today, and thank you for the important work that you're doing in this space. If this conversation has raised any issues for you today and you would like to speak to someone, then please do get in contact with Lifeline on 13 11 14. And if you are experiencing domestic or family violence, then please get in contact with 1-800-RESPECT. Thanks for joining us today.